Welcome to the Retire Right podcast with Larry Heller. You deserve complete financial advice. There's no acceptable alternative if you want a plan to live well and on your terms. Complete financial advice equals complete peace of mind. Now, let's get into this week's podcast episode.
Hello and welcome to Retire Right with Larry Heller from Heller Wealth Management. Today I am absolutely ecstatic. I guess that's the word I'm going to use. Larry has a new book out and it's called Retire Right. Lots of people retire wrong and learn how to retire right. Larry, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Eric?
I am doing fantastic. Larry, congratulations on the book. It looks amazing.
Thank you.
Two things I noticed right off the bat on the book is the cover. You've got puzzle pieces. I love the analogy of a puzzle, especially when we talk about retirement, because there are so many pieces. And if you don't have all the pieces in the right places, the picture of your retirement, as I see it, just doesn't look the same, right? Or doesn't quite look right.
Absolutely. You picked up one of the themes of the book and what we do by big puzzle.
Yeah. And the other picture that I really like is you're on the back and you look really good. So
thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on that picture because that's fantastic as well.
It's always Photoshop.
Hey, you pay somebody enough money, everybody looks good, right? All right. So besides the fact that you're the professional, right? You're the expert in this field. Why did you write the book? What drove you to actually put this, put pen to paper and get all this stuff down?
Well, a couple things. First, retirement, or if you want to use that word, your second act in life is changing. It's not your grandparents' retirement anymore when they retired at 65 and lucky enough to live 20 years and maybe had a small pension and Social Security and lived out their life. The world is changing. People are living longer. People want to do more things. They want to stay more active. They may want to work part-time. So the actual world of retirement is changing. And if you retire at 60, 65, there's a good chance you may live 30 years. So I wanted to be able to, put a guide together to think about the next stage in your life. Mm-hmm. So many people, when they come to us, the first thing is, what are my investments? How are they? What can we do better? And I'm like, whoa. The first thing we want to do is we want to look and see what is your dreams? What do you want to do in the next 5 years? What do you want to do in the next 10 years? Mm-hmm. The 20 years. What is the second act going to be? How do you vision yourself in this? And talk about that. And then talk about the strategies and tactics and ways of accomplishing this. Yeah. So this is not really a detailed, step-by-step approach. It's really a big picture. What should you think about as you approach retirement? And also to give you some ideas and some strategies that you'll need. Like you mentioned, the puzzle pieces, we talk about that in the book, how that you have to think about if you make one decision, how it impacts something else. Yeah. So just doing this for so many years and seeing people who have made the wrong decisions or, could have made better decisions. Mm-hmm. I thought it would be great to have a book there to kind of get people thinking about what their next act is going to be.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, Larry, you and I have talked before about this, but I think the first time I really, really, really thought about retirement was around when I was 30, and it wasn't because I was
just last year.
Exactly. That was what my wife's last year was 30 and this year's 30 as well. And I think next year's going to be 30 also, Larry. No, for me, that was quite a few years ago, but I thought about retirement because my dad was retiring, right? And that's the first time I really, really thought about, well, what about me? What about my family? What about my wife and I and my kids? How is that going to play out for me? My dad had a great foundation, 20 years in the Air Force, retired from there, worked 16 years at Boeing, was retiring from there. And then, of course, he's going to have Social Security, and he's going to have these other things that he's done to set himself up. But at that moment, that's when I started thinking about it. So my question is, with this book specifically, what age should somebody be looking at reading this book and getting into it and learning some of those tips and tricks and the thoughts that you put into this book?
Well, I don't really want to put an age on this because everyone's a little bit different. I mean, you're even reading stories now. The millennials are trying to really retire early and figuring out a way of doing it. I'm talking about 30, retiring. So there's no real age. It's really, I think if you're somewhere, 5 years out is probably the ideal time to really, fine tune this. Of course, the earlier that you can start thinking about it, the better. I mean, we always talk about, 401k plans and starting to put away as much as you can as earlier because of the compounding effect, how that can be. But, in all realistic, people are living their lives and they have kids and they have college education, and they don't really focus on it, until they get to that stage. Actually today we had a potential couple come in, and all the things that we have in the book that we were talking about, and they're both 64. So, so there's no real right answer, but probably around 5 years is probably when you really can focus in on some of these because you know some of the answers. Some people know exactly what their expenses are going to be and where they're going to be living 10 years down the road. But as you get closer, you have a little bit more specifics that help.
And I know there's a ton that you've packed into the book, and I don't want you to spoil a whole lot. I want people to be able to pick this up and get it and read it for themselves and then really dive into a good conversation with you. So I'm going to ask you a favor. Do you have 2 examples for me? I'm looking for one example of somebody that you've worked with that really did a fantastic job with planning. Their timing was good. They took into consideration all the pieces of the puzzle that they were going to need, and they're experiencing the retirement that they dreamed of and they planned for with you. And on the flip side of that coin, do you have an example of somebody who didn't plan well that maybe came to you later in the game or came to you and just hadn't done really much of anything or any of the work towards a good retirement? And how are you able to help someone in that situation? Because I think there's a lot of listeners that are thinking, wow, I don't think I've covered my bases, and how do I clean up this mess? So do you have a couple examples for us?
Sure. And the first thing, that I talk about in the book, and the first we'll talk about the pillars, is really, your vision and your mindset, and really trying to think about that. Like I said, painting a picture 10 years down the road. So the people that, the clients that have come to us and have those ideas and can do that have a better success in retirement. For example, and I mentioned some of these stories in the book. I had a couple, and the wife was a teacher, the husband was executive, and he was 60, and he was like, I don't want to wait to 65. So he methodically was able to visualize where he wanted to be, and he wanted to stop work. Now, actually, he wanted to go part-time in 2 years and stop working in 3 years. And he knew what his expenses are going to be, and he knew the lifestyle that he wanted. And so when he knew all that, it was a lot easier to plan for and go through the numbers because he had this vision in his mind. He had the numbers behind it, and we were able to put a plan in and execute the plan. So, and he did that. He basically went part-time, and he's gotten some consulting jobs afterwards, but he's a big photographer, so that's what he wants to do, and he's passed on some of these jobs. His wife was a teacher, and we knew exactly when she was going to stop working and what the pension would going to be. So when you're able to visualize what you want to do, and you're able to have all the numbers and all the investments laid out, you can put a plan together and it can work. On the flip side, we've had people that come in and just basically arbitrarily say, you know what, I think I spend $10,000 a month. I'm not really sure, but that's what it is. Let's plan based upon that number. And it makes it a lot more difficult for success later on, because if you are trying to do that, that's when you can really get hurt. Luckily, we haven't had too many people. You'd be surprised that people are willing to live within their numbers. But we've had an example client 10 years ago. One of the reasons why they're actually okay is because the stock market has done so well. But their expense number was well above what they really should be there. and they were willing to take some extra risk in the investment allocation, and that worked out for them. I wouldn't be recommending that today, and they maybe had a little luck at the time that they retired, but that's what they wanted to do. So those are two different type of examples that come up, and it's really a lot of part is really the planning. And that's one of the things about the book that really talks about the more that you can plan, the more that you have these strategies in place, you can be more successful. We see certain clients sometimes and they're drawing down the wrong assets. Mm-hmm. What do I mean by the wrong assets? Well, the way they're drawing it down, they're paying more taxes. Yeah. So if they're paying more taxes, even though the retirement plan may work, it didn't work to their maximum.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are some of the things that we don't know as just the general public. That's why you guys are the professionals. That's why, you go to the doctor if you need your appendix out. I'm certainly not going to do it in my kitchen or try to do it myself. I don't know what I'm doing. And so there's so many little things that can catch people off guard or trip people up in that retirement. And I think you said something earlier. You got to plan for 20 to 30 years past the day you retire. And I think where a lot of people make that mistake is like your example, somebody said, I think I spend $10,000 a month in my expenses. Well, that's great. And maybe they have it tracked and they do spend $10,000 a month, but then their mindset is, so if I have $10,000 a month in income in retirement for the rest of my life, I'll be fine. They didn't even think about inflation, right? 20 years ago, $10,000 was way different than it is now. And so that's an easy way to get yourself in a bind and run out of money or not be able to live the lifestyle that you really wanted to because you didn't take that into account. I think that's why it's so important to have somebody that can say, okay, let's look at all these factors. Like you said, the taxes, what inflation's going to look like, how much a dollar's really going to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Is it going to get you that same lifestyle that you want? And of course, all the increased costs, healthcare and all those things that you talk with clients about all the time. So not to steal any thunder, I want to get back to the book.
Well, you actually make a couple of great points. So talk about inflation. So in the book, we actually have a chart about inflation, and we actually go through two different inflation rates and kind of show you the differences in there, because it's very critical to put inflation into your plan, especially over 20, 30 years. So that is, definitely one of the tidbits that we talk about inside in the book. One of the other things that comes up, and this is not really in the book, but nobody knows how long they're going to live. So we have different conversations with people. So, I want my money to last. I'm not going to live past 85. So let's look at the retirement. And I'm like, but what happens if you do? And then we have other clients that want to make sure the money's going to last to age, 100. So there is still some, type of planning in there, because if you plan to age 100, maybe you don't enjoy and spend as much during your lifetime. So there are some variables that you want to discuss with clients and go through that when you're kind of putting the plan into place.
Yeah, absolutely. And just knowing, like you said, between 20 and 30 years, if somebody's living in retirement, let's split that number in half. 25 years ago, a gallon of gas was just over $1. It's not that way now. And if you're going to travel in retirement, how's that going to look? What's gas going to be? Just that one minor thing in your life, the gas to go travel to see your family, right? Or the gas to get that RV up and running. So it can make a huge difference in the future. Now, you talk in the book about the 4 pillars, and we've talked about the 4 pillars on the podcast before, but can you go over those real quick just for our listening audience so they know what's in the book?
Sure. So the 4 pillars that we talk about is mindset, or the vision that I've been talking about. And then, we go into strategies, some of the strategies that you need to implement. And then, really get into some specifics and tactics. So there's, different tactics that you can use. And then finally, progress, life changes. And just because you had a plan in the first year doesn't mean it's going to work. We've had scenarios where we have a plan in place, and unfortunately a parent got sick and they needed to help the parents, or they, decided where they were living wasn't really where they wanted to live. So the plan's got to change. So you want to, check it and check your tactics. And we go into a lot of detail in each one of these. And then we share some stories in each one of them, client stories, One of my favorite things, I talk about visualization. I think I've mentioned before, with someone like Jim Carrey, who, wrote a big check and put it in his pocket, until he was able to cash it. So we talk about some of those stories and actual, client type stories, so you can get an idea of, how it's worked and how it's played out.
Yeah, I've drawn the analogy before about having a doctor take a look at you and all the things that they do, and kind of you as a professional being able to provide all sorts of advice. But also, I really think about a personal trainer, right? A personal trainer is going to start you off on a path that isn't going to be just jumping in, okay, now it's time to run a marathon. You're going to build up to that success. And I see that within the work that you do with your clients, and a lot of what the book is talking about as far as, hey, I don't want to call it baby steps because that's associated with something else, but it really is, here are some small steps to take, and here are the next steps to take after that. And here's some decisions that you're going to need to make. So how do all these things play in together? So I'm really excited to see what's in there. I haven't read the entire thing yet. I am looking forward to it. But I know the book is a guideline, and you've said that earlier in the podcast. What else do you want to share that the book has as we wrap up this podcast?
One thing, and at the end, I provide 7 steps for your financial action plan. So there's, in the book, you're going to be able to see these 7 steps. And, it is not really designed for somebody to kind of do it themselves, but if they are pretty savvy, they may be able to kind of pick this up and go through all the checklists and go through what they need to do and do it themselves. It's really a guide to start thinking about what maybe they can ask their financial advisor and make sure that for themselves everything was taken care of. But the big thing is really to start thinking about and visualizing your retirement, and that you do need to take all these steps to make it successful.
Yeah, one step at a time. That's what it's all about. All right, Larry, so where can people get the book? Where can we find this?
So you can go directly to Amazon, Retire Right. Lots of people retire wrong, learn how to retire right. Or they could go to our website, Hello Wealth Management, and click on the link there, which will take them over to Amazon and purchase the book there. You could either buy an ebook or you can buy a softcover book.
Fantastic. And what if they come visit you? Is there any discount if they come visit you in your office?
I'll sign the book for them if they come visit us.
There you go. That's perfect. And there's a great picture, Larry, on the back, like I said, so you'll know exactly who you're looking for in that office. All right,
Absolutely.
Larry. Great. Thank you so much. Congratulations on the book. That is fantastic. And I know that it's going to be a big help to people. And hopefully, I'm really hoping that it's a roadmap, and it's a map that's going to drive them to contact you and contact your office so that they can begin this relationship and really say, you know what, I do want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. I do want to make sure that my retirement goes the way that I want it to. And I would love some help with that. So when they're ready for that step, what number do they call, Larry?
You can dial the office at 631-293-2806.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today, Larry.
You're welcome, Eric.
All right. And thank you all for listening to the Retire Right podcast with Larry Heller. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Larry comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This will make it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at Heller Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.